This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast. And for this holiday week, we are revisiting a conversation I had a few years back with one of the biggest touring stand-up comedians in the game, Sebastian Maniscalco. Before Sebastian was quite famous enough to have an entire SNL sketch that made fun of his very unique onstage affect, we had this really fun talk right around the release of his last Netflix special, Is It Me? Now he is out with a brand new hour on Hulu called It Ain't Right. I hope everyone is having a great Thanksgiving break, and we will be back with an all-new episode next week. But for now, here's me with Sebastian Maniscalco. Where are you right now? Are you home? Are you on the road? What's going on?
Where am I? I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and
Is it hard to remember where you are day to day? You must be travel so much.
I had to look out the window to see where I was. Yeah, I was in Naples, Florida for Thanksgiving, and then I came out here a couple nights ago. I did Asheville last night, tonight I do Charlotte, and then I bounced to Rhode Island tomorrow, and then to Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And then done. We're done. And then we're done for a while. And
then you get to go home for a bit?
No, then I go to New York for Jimmy Fallon and some other shows that
just
I'm doing.
Keeps going,
yeah.
Well, congrats on the new special. I just got to see it and really enjoyed it. It's a big special. It's a very Rat Pack influenced, obviously, and you talk about that at the beginning of it. This is I believe it's your fifth hour-long special and second on Netflix. Is that right?
I think this is my sixth special.
Oh, sixth. All right.
One I did for Comedy Central, my first one.
Okay.
And then I did, I think, 3 for Showtime, and 2 for Showtime, and then this is third for Netflix. Third? I don't know, bro. I don't know.
It's hard to keep track.
It's all blended together at this point. But yeah, it is kind of inspired by the Rat Pack. It is in Las Vegas. And I wanted to, I just want to do something a little different. And not that anybody never has dressed up in a tuxedo for a special before, but I just wanted to promote the fact that it was a little bit more of just dressing up for it. It was just a throwback to how Las Vegas kind of used to be back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. And you asked the audience to dress up as well?
Yeah, it wasn't a requirement. It was just can you please dress up in formal wear? And I think about maybe 25 to 30% of those people did. And I think we moved them down. People that were dressed up, we kind of saved seats in the front to move them.
It's good incentive. You get better seats if you dress up.
Yeah. But yeah, it the way it was shot, it looks like the room is all dressed up, but it was only very few.
Yeah, I like those images at the beginning of where you actually put yourself in the Rat Pack. And do you feel like you would have fit in with that crowd? Do you feel like you maybe would have fit in better with that crowd than the current the current crowd?
I didn't know those guys intimately. I just kind of was in love with the presentation of not only those guys off stage, but on stage. I just feel like, it's a yearning for that time to kind of maybe come back. It just seems like things are very casual nowadays. I mean, definitely. I remember, I used to work in the corporate world, and it was like casual Friday. And now it's like work from home in your pajamas. So
that's what everybody does now.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the dressing up, the sort of the setting, Las Vegas and all of it, how do you think it affected the actual content of the special or what you wanted to say on stage? Did it have an impact on that?
I don't think it necessarily had an impact on the material because I was doing the material throughout, the last 2 years. It just happened to be that we shot it in Las Vegas and added this twist of a throwback. But as far as the material concerned, I don't think it was influenced by the setting.
Yeah. I feel like there is a big theme of your comedy, like you were saying, of longing for the good old days, or wanting things to be more like they were. Do you feel like that's increased over time as you get older? Do you get more and more frustrated with modern society as you age?
Yeah, I have this thing for nostalgia in my act where I often compare, oh, this is how, I guess the best example was this doorbell bit I used to do about the doorbell ringing back then and how it is now. And I feel, especially now having kids, I feel like kind of the way I grew up, kind of simple, there's just a simple upbringing, but we had a great time. And sometimes you want to give that same thing to your children. And I'm thinking now, is that possible, or is that something that, in today's climate, is that something that my kids are? I know they're not going to experience the same thing I experienced, obviously, but I just want to implement some of those kind of old world, old school values that I grew up with in my kids. And I'm finding that, I can do that at the home and instill that at the home, but just the way the world is today, as soon as they kind of go out into the world, it's very different than I grew up.
Yeah, I mean, you have that long bit, I think, towards the beginning of the special where you talk about the kid at your one of your kids' schools who identifies as a lion. Is that a true story? Is that something that really happened, or is that sort of a metaphor for how you see parenting?
Well, that's not at my kid's school. No, it's a story I actually heard from somebody that I made it sound like my kid was going through. That's kind of like a lot of times in comedy. Mm-hmm. You take it's like almost like a movie where you take things that you've heard or you piece them together. Another example is that when my dad, I told a joke about my dad murdering animals in the backyard by putting antifreeze on bologna. He never did that. I actually heard that from somebody else and then just kind of weaved it into my act and gave that characteristic to my father. And I think nowadays people get really hopped up in regards to things that our comedians are saying and think it's true or think it's whatever. And it's just kind of putting a mirror on society and kind of making light of everything.
Maybe there used to be a feeling of, understanding that what a comedian was saying was just a joke or was not necessarily based in truth. But now you feel like it does seem like people take comedy more seriously than they used to.
I think a minority takes it seriously. A very small portion, I think, of the populace gets hopped up when it comes to stand-up comedy. From what I'm seeing on the road, that's not the case. People are dying to laugh. They have a sense of humor. They are not taking things to heart or seriously. And it's just made, if you don't like the material, don't like it, just, you don't have to listen to it. It's just, I just don't know when it became like certain things are off limits when it comes to humor. That's what kind of comedians do. They kind of point out everything that's going on in life and put a humorous spin on it. But nowadays that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching your comedy for a long time. You've never been a particularly political or controversial comedian. You do kind of imagine throughout this special, you do this thing where you kind of imagine members of the audience criticizing you for being politically incorrect, or, sort of anticipating the pushback that you might get on certain things. Why did you decide to include that? Is that something that you've actually experienced, people coming up to you or online or something where they are pushing back on things that you say in that way?
No, not necessarily having to do with me, but that whole thing of recognizing that people might get upset based on what I'm saying was influenced by the state of comedy today. So I'm just, instead of you saying that you're offended, I'm going to tell you you're probably going to be a little bent out of shape about what I'm saying here. And it actually, if you're in the room or you're on stage, you could actually feel a sigh of relief when I say that. And it allows the people to loosen up a little bit actually enjoy the humor rather than looking around and going, is anybody laughing? I'm just kind of giving the audience an outlet to say, hey, he recognizes that people might be offended or whatnot. And people get a good laugh out of it. And I just, as a comedian, noticed that it worked for me to say that and have much more enjoyable set. Not that I wouldn't if I didn't say that, but I just noticed that there is a little bit of a tension relief when I kind of mention that this might cause people to sweat.
Yeah, I mean, in the same way that audiences might take what comedians say too seriously, I think there are a lot of comedians working right now who sort of are courting controversy in a way, or they're saying things knowing that they're going to be controversial. I'm not sure that's what you're doing, but do you ever worry about sort of sparking that sort of controversy or backlash in the way that other, big comics have?
Yeah, it's not like I'm seeking it out. It's not like I'm seeking out controversial topics. It's just I'm always true to myself, true to what I see. And I'm always been an observational comedian. And this so happens to be the next iteration of it. This is what I find funny. And it's not like I'm looking to press people's buttons at all. I don't even think what I'm saying in this special is controversial. It's just, I just look at it as fun. People are having a good time with it. And I'm not seeking it out. I'm just being who I am. And if people have a problem with it, listen, you cannot appease everybody. Someone's always going to have something to say. And if I edit myself and I don't feel the freedom to do what I think is funny, I might as well stop doing stand-up, because then as soon as you start editing yourself, you're not going to have an act.
Yeah. You experienced a little bit of this, I think, when you hosted the MTV Video Music Awards, which maybe wasn't necessarily your audience, a lot of younger people and influencers and all that. How did you sort of handle that in the moment? Did you feel like it was connecting in a different, or not connecting in the way that you normally feel like you connect with an audience that's your audience that comes to see you?
That audience it's a very difficult audience to perform in front of, because, it's a music show. It's younger, it skews younger. They're standing up. The environment is not such where comedy can be digested.
It's about the opposite of of the audience for your special, all dressed up in tuxedos and seated and ready to see you. And
not to say that, that younger people do enjoy what I do, but it just in that particular setting, and the material that I chose to do during that set was kind of poking fun at the audience and whatnot. And I didn't even think it was basically material that I had previously done and kind of incorporated it into the MTV Video Music Awards, which I never really had a problem with. But after that, of course, people felt that it was inappropriate or what have you. And so be it. It's just, it is what it is. I just do what I do. And no matter what situation it is, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, that was a probably more high profile gig for you than other things that you've done. Did you have any regrets about doing it afterwards, or did you feel good about your decision to take that on?
Well, when it was first presented to me, I didn't necessarily jump at the opportunity, because I thought I was 46 at the time. I'm an older guy. Yeah. This historically has been given to comedians who are, in the pop culture zeitgeist and are younger, maybe in their 20s or what have you. So I knew I wasn't probably the guy that a lot of people were even going to know in that environment. But as a kid who grew up watching MTV and the Michael Jackson videos and, Kurt Loder and all that stuff, I'm like, how can I not do this? This is like a something that would run full circle for me. I used to watch this show, and now I'm hosting this show. So it was something I thought that it was kind of an honor to do, but maybe not necessarily you know, maybe it came 15 years too late for me.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm excited to tell you about Inside Trump's Head, a new podcast from The Daily Beast, hosted by Trump biographer Michael Wolff and the Beast's resident provocateur, Joanna Coles. 3 times a week, Michael and Joanna unpack what's really going on inside the mind of the world's most unpredictable man, Donald Trump, bringing you unflinching access and insight you won't find anywhere else. If you've ever wondered what the hell is Trump thinking and who hasn't, you don't want to miss these conversations. Subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on YouTube and the next day on your favorite podcast platforms. I want to talk about a little bit about your beginnings in comedy, but even just as we were talking about how the comedy world has changed, what are other ways that you feel like the comedy world, the stand-up world has changed or evolved since you've been in it for a while now?
Yeah, so I started in 1998, and there was really no social media to speak of back then, or YouTube or anything like that. The whole thing for a comedian back then, at least for me, was getting on stage every night, multiple times, and working out my thoughts and figuring out what's funny and what's not. And now you fast forward, 24 years later, and I was just actually talking to my opener last night about this, Pat McGann, saying, are comedians still going out there and doing a Tuesday night show in front of 13 people to see if the material works? Or has it now shifted to you are now doing YouTube videos or TikTok videos and doing something humorous there? Because I see some of these TikTok people or YouTube people or whoever, these social media influencers, whatever, doing stand-up. And I find that, wow, like I remember I wasn't headlining a club until 8 to 10 years in. And that was 8 to 10 years of doing comedy every night.
Right.
Some of these people are headlining clubs off of TikTok.
Yeah, totally different.
For 2 years. And I've never seen the material I just see it from afar going, oh, wow, that guy doing stand-up and he's doing YouTube videos. How does that translate to the stage? I don't know, but I've just noticed that the change has been a lot of comedians now are gaining popularity online and then making a jump into the stand-up world from their popularity online. I just don't know. For me, I know how long it took to even establish an act. And I don't know how guys are doing that off of talking into a camera with a ring light. I don't know. I don't know how that translates. So I guess teach his own. If people are laughing, they're laughing. I think that the game has changed a little bit.
Yeah. You started out really at the Comedy Store was your home club at the beginning in LA.
Yeah.
What was the scene like there at that time? Who were the big comics when you were coming up that you got to see who maybe had some influence on your style or that you were watching at that time?
Actually, ironically enough, I was influenced early on as a small kid watching Johnny Carson and the comedians that came on Johnny Carson, whether it be Don Rickles or Jerry Seinfeld or whoever the comedians were in the 80s. I kind of learned a lot from them. When I got to the Comedy Store, it was on its way. I thought it was going to close, to be honest.
Oh, really?
With you. Nobody was there. This is how bad the Comedy Store was in 98 to 2002, I'd say. You'd get a set, you get a spot, shows start at 9. You would have to call the club to see if anybody showed up so they could start the show. And they needed, I think, 5 people in the room in order for them to start the show.
5-person minimum.
Yeah. So back then, there wasn't really a lot of big names coming through the Comedy Store. I mean, the ones that used to pop in were like an Eddie Griffin, a Dice Clay, maybe a Wayans brother would come in. But I didn't really learn a lot necessarily watching comedians at the Comedy Store. It was far earlier that I've always been a huge fan of stand-up. And when I was at the Comedy Store, it was more like a gymnasium for me to just kind of work out material, get comfortable on stage, going up at 1:00 in the morning in front of, 10 people, and 5 were passed out and the other 5 were, like those were the challenges to make people laugh. And that's where you kind of build your bones doing stand up in front of people that necessarily might not want to laugh or be there, or it's just a fight, like a struggle. And the comedy store was the best place for me. Still is.
I think physicality has become such a big part of your style, especially playing these huge venues. Was that always the case? Was that something that really came with playing bigger stages, or were you doing that kind of stuff from the beginning?
Not right out of the gate. I wasn't doing a lot of physical humor. I just noticed when I did a little physicality in my act that it was a surprise to a lot of people, because just my appearance, just the way I kind of handle myself on stage, you wouldn't think that I'd be, making these faces or making these wild movements with my body. I think it was a raw stress for less bit where I threw something across the room and really acted it out that I noticed, oh, people are really gravitating towards this physicality that I'm doing. So it kind of grew from there. And, I never wanted to do too much of it, just because if you do too much of it, it's like, all right, already. So you just kind of give like splashes of it during the act. And, especially nowadays, it's like the days of just standing there telling jokes behind the microphone. Yeah, it's great. But the way attention spans are nowadays, it's like, you gotta give them something to look at.
Yeah, you gotta really engage. One that stands out to me from the new special is when you imitate a greyhound dog running through the park. Is that a sort of one that is that a good example for you of one that you kind of had to figure out how do you work those out or figure out how to do that on stage?
Yeah, I know. I get that question a lot. Like, how does that come? I just, like, as I'm telling the story, I'm visualizing the story in my head. And as I'm visualizing the dog, I just naturally act out what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. So that I noticed got a laugh when I acted out the dog, when I did it once. So I just like, all right, that works. So maybe add another one. And, they always say comedy works best in 3. So I do three versions of it. And, again, it's just like, for me, it's not really a strong joke in its entirety. Sometimes the joke is good, but if you add that last thing, that could make it better. And sometimes that's what I do with the physicality. Sometimes when the joke might be lacking something, if you act out a portion of it, it might make what you said prior funnier, or the bit a little bit more whole. So yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what physical comedy for me is used for. Is it could be used to make a joke better than it is, and also it could be used. I do another joke with acting out what is it? An alpaca, which I didn't put in the set, which I was pining on whether or not I should put it in the set. And that was just, the joke was really good. And I added that, which made it like, the whole thing for me as a comedian is try to make the jokes as good as what you just heard or better. Right? That's the challenge for me as a comedian. Because I don't want you to come to a show and go, first half was good, but in the middle, and then at the end it's terrible. Like, I'm trying to make it funny throughout. And it's difficult because some jokes are better. They're better than others. Yeah. But I'm trying to make them all kind of equally good.
Well, in some ways, I'm sure you're always trying to top that doorbell bit that you mentioned, because that's probably the one that people know the best, and I'm sure bring up the most or request when there's an opportunity to request. Why do you think that one in particular connected so well with people? Went viral online and really has become a defining bit for you.
I think it was like a multi-generational joke where it kind of hit everybody from from an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old and everybody in between, because everybody could relate to how it used to be when the doorbell rang, and now everybody could relate to how it is now. And I find that jokes that people are living are the funniest jokes. People are living that joke. So I find when you get a moment in time like that, where you kind of hit on a situation that people are very familiar with, and they do, but they've never thought about it in any other way. I think those are the gems that comedians are looking for. At least that's what I'm looking for. Very hard to replicate and get it all at the right time. But I think that's the reason why people, any joke I do that's observational that people are living, I feel does really well. And it's just a challenge to find those little morsels in everyday life where people go, oh man, I do that.
Yeah,
I know that's what resonates with me.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think anything that you can relate to. And that's also, I think, the challenge that a lot of comedians have faced as they get more successful and they're riding private jets and they're doing all these things that most people don't do. Then maybe you have less experiences that are relatable to people. So do you think about that at all in terms of keeping those experiences in your life that you can then refer to that are relatable to anybody?
Yeah, that is definitely, I mean, I'm taking 1.5 years off of doing like a major tour, and I'm going to live my life. I'm going to, take the kids to here, Disneyland or whatever it is. And I feel like the more I live my life, the more comedy comes from it. Now, yeah, am I going to Target every week like I used to go buy shampoo? No. And I don't think a lot of people are, because
they're using Amazon.
They're using Amazon. So everybody uses Amazon. So okay, there's a place where you could play how Amazon works, because everybody uses Amazon. But like I used to book my own travel, go through the Expedia thing. I mean, I even notice sometimes like things I don't normally do that I used to do, how some of that's changed, and I haven't noticed it because I haven't been participating in it. Right. Yeah. And once I participate in it, then I'm like, okay, like I went to Starbucks today down the street just to get a cup of coffee. It was packed. A fan came up and he goes, "Oh, what are you hanging out with the commoners?" I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a cup of coffee.
Going to Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like to just do what I normally did before I had any type of recognition. I think that is where kind of a lot of relatability happens for comedians. I don't really talk about things that are the perks of success. I don't talk about taking a private jet. I don't talk about staying at nice hotels.
Yeah, because people can't relate to that, right?
They can't relate to it. Or if I do talk about it on a podcast, I'll give a spin of someone who's not used to this lifestyle and the questions I have when it comes to private air travel. I'm like, do I tip? Yeah. Like, do I tip the pilots? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm trying to be like a spokesman for people that might not be experiencing this, because I'm experiencing it it's very new to me. So I never like to, I don't know. I just find it low end to brag about that type of stuff, right? Or talk about it like everybody's doing it.
Yeah, right. I feel like there is this narrative about you in some of the other articles I was reading, leading up to this and things, where you're this hugely accomplished, successful comedian, but you're not quite the household name of some of the, other people like you mentioned, like Jerry Seinfeld or people like that. Do you feel that that's starting to change? Do you feel like that narrative is going away, or that you're kind of reaching that level of some of those, people who maybe came a little bit before you?
I think the reason why that is I haven't really been in the mainstream of any particular successful TV show or movie. I didn't pop off of that. I really
just stand up.
Yeah, it's just like my fans know who I am, and that's great. But I am noticing, I'd say over the pandemic, I have to tell you, coming out of that, I've noticed more recognition of maybe people knowing who I am, just about round and about. I never used to have any really recognition at a mall or an airport. And I, to be honest with you, I travel alone. It's not like I got the security with me.
Yeah.
But it is changing, and I think it's changing because of some of the film and TV I've been associated with.
Right. Yeah.
Along with the stand-up.
Yeah. I mean, the Netflix specials are obviously huge. You also, as you said, have been doing some more acting. You managed to get roles in two Best Picture. One Best Picture winner and one Best Picture nominee in Green Book and The Irishman. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a change of pace for me, and I enjoyed doing those little small parts. Movies as a whole have been a little difficult for me just because of the nature of how movies are shot, and you always hear you're sitting there waiting and whatnot. So yeah, that's been a little hard to get used to, but I enjoy doing those parts.
Yeah, they both also, you're playing characters who are part of that bygone era. So there's a theme there too, where I think you get to kind of enter that world that you were talking about, that the Rat Pack and all that with those movies.
Yeah, it kind of threw me back into that time period. I never really thought about it the way you just explained it, but yeah, I played kind of period pieces in those movies, but. Yeah, working with those guys. I mean, it was. I had a lot of anxiety working with, Peter Farrelly and Vigo and De Niro, Pesci. I mean, again, these are guys I had posters on my wall.
Yeah.
And now, next thing you know, I'm doing a scene with Joe Pesci at the Copacabana. Crazy.
What stands out from that experience of filming that scene in particular?
Well, a couple things. They took the Copacabana, or they took the Gotham Comedy Club in New York City and transformed it into the Copacabana, which is where the first scene I was going to do with De Niro and Pesci was, which I found very ironic because the Gotham Comedy Club was the first comedy club I performed in New York City.
So you at least felt you had some recognition of that location.
Yeah. And then secondly, I was, I couldn't sleep for 2 hours prior. Due to the fact that I'm going to be in a scene with two legendary actors, and Martin Scorsese's directing this thing. So they were very, very accommodating with me, very friendly, very nice guys. And it was like anything else. As soon as I did like a little rehearsal with them, because there's a part of me that was going, should I be here? Am I good enough? I'm a comedian. I'm not really an actor. I haven't done this a lot, and now I'm doing it with the best. So there's a little self-doubt going into that. But, as soon as you did the first rehearsal, I started to feel like, yeah, I belong here. I deserve this. And it was good. I learned a lot. It was a lesson in movie making. Even though I was there for like 6 or 7 days, it was definitely gave me the confidence moving forward to do other projects with the confidence that I need.
Yeah, well, you must have done something right, because now Robert De Niro is going to play your father in your movie. Is that right?
Yeah, so I co-wrote a movie with my writing partner, Austin Earl, loosely based on my life. And we wrote it thinking, it's never going to get made. We wrote it. And next thing you know, Robert De Niro had a copy. Loved it, wanted to read it with a group of people. I guess that's how he kind of makes the decision on whether or not he wants to do a movie. He has like a reading. Mm-hmm. So we hired actors. We all got in a room together. And again, I'm sitting there. This is like surreal. This is my Robert De Niro's playing my dad in the movie. And sure enough, he enjoyed it, loved it, signed on for it. And the thing that pops out in my head about that experience was Robert De Niro wanted to get to know my father. Mm. So my father flew out to Oklahoma where he was shooting a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio at the time and spent 3 days with De Niro.
Wow.
And De Niro wanted to know like how he wore his hat, how he held a cigar, how, because he's a hairstylist, how do you cut hair? And then he wanted my dad to come to the set and kind of coach him through a scene where De Niro's doing a dye job. And again, I'm sitting there and my father's with De Niro. And of course, my father came up to me and goes, "How much am I getting paid for this?" And I go, "Paid?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm missing, because he still works. Yeah. He had to take off work to be there. I'm like, "Dad, you're working with Robert De Niro. You're worried about getting paid?" He goes, "I'm fucking losing money here." So just to kind of see them two interact with one another, and then subsequently showing my father the movie at my house a couple months ago, and he was crying at the end of the movie. Just, I think a lot hit him at that point. Basically, the movie's a love letter to my father. Yeah, and to see De Niro playing him in a movie, I don't even know what that does to someone, just to see that. But he was emotional about it. He said he liked it. He's very critical about what I do. He has no problem. No problems telling me I sucked or you should do this, you should do that. He's very opinionated about, especially my stand-up. Mm-hmm. I'm doing Fallon on Monday. I will know whether my father likes the appearance on whether he calls me or not. If he doesn't say anything, or when I call him, he doesn't say anything about it, I know he didn't like it.
So he knows not to say anything if he didn't like it.
Yeah. So if he mentions it, he loves it. I know he loves it. If he doesn't say anything, I know he hated it.
So is the movie's finished now, or what are the plans to put it out?
It's finished, done, coming out next year. Don't exactly have a date on it yet, but it's coming out next year. And I got a couple movies coming out, a few movies coming out actually next year, which it's going to be interesting to see. I got a little part in this Mario Brothers movie. That the trailer just dropped a couple of days ago. So it's fun to do these movies, these animated movies, especially now that I have kids 5 and 3. To go to the movies with them and have daddy voicing a part is pretty cool being a father. So
yeah, I mean, as we said, you're pretty famous already, and you get recognized and all that. How do you feel about the prospect of being even more recognizable, or it being even more difficult for you to go into Starbucks and that kind of thing?
I don't know. I'm fine with it. I don't until it becomes an issue. Right now. I don't really mind it if people want to take a photo or say they enjoy what I do. It doesn't really bother me. It bothers me when I'm with my family and trying to I got my kid. I'm trying to dress my kid whatever. Put a jacket on and I got someone wanting to take a photo. It could be a little, but it's part of the game. Believe me, if you would have talked to me 15 years ago and said, "Oh, would you ever, be bothered if somebody came up to you and at Starbucks?" I mean, fuck no. So I don't mind it.
You got to be grateful for what you got.
Yeah.
So now I want to do our segment called The First Laugh. I'm going to run through some firsts in your career, in your life in comedy, and we can talk about them. So going all the way back to childhood, what was the first piece of comedy that made you laugh really hard, or one of the first that you could remember?
I don't know if this was the first, but what stands out early on was John Ritter in Three's Company. I really enjoyed watching him. That's where I got a lot of my physical humor from was Ritter and how he used to fall and pop up and have a face, and you could just laugh at the reaction of the guy's face or what have you. So I was a huge Three's Company fan. I would watch it like game tape. Every time it came out, it was on Nick at Night. It came on. I watched, the same episode would come on and I would watch it over and over again. And I could care less, but yeah, John Ritter was one of the first influences.
That's great. Do you remember the first time that you knew you were funny, that you could make other people laugh?
Yeah, it was around the kitchen table. I always kind of stated that the kitchen table was my first stage, making my family laugh based on my observations at school and what have you. I was never really a class clown. I just kind of observed some of the situations at school, came home and reported it back to my family, and they would laugh. So I guess making my family laugh was kind of the first inkling I had that I had a sense of humor and a knack for storytelling.
When you think about your very first time performing stand-up, what springs to mind? Where were you? How did it go? How do you think about it now?
First time doing stand-up was at Northern Illinois University. I attended school there, and I won a comedy contest to open up for the headliner that was coming to the school. And I had my parents come out, and my sister was there, and it was the worst set I ever had. It was in front of a primarily Black audience, and they were yelling. I didn't know what they were yelling at the time, but I found out later on they were yelling Sandman, Sandman. And Sandman was who they called for when an act sucked at the Apollo Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, Sandman, what the hell are they talking about? And it was really, really bad. However, I did know that this was kind of where I was supposed to be. Although it was an awful experience, I just knew this is my calling. This is what I enjoy doing. And I knew that, I wasn't going to be a hit out of the box. It's just going to take a lot of work. Like everything in life takes a lot of work. You don't become a bodybuilder overnight. You got to lift the weights. That's
so funny. So many comedians I talk to talk about how their very first set went really well, and then they bombed the next, 50, but that first one kind of kept them going. But so it's interesting that wasn't the case for you, but you knew that you wanted to keep going.
Yeah. Something in me is like, I know this was awful, but in some way, shape or form, it did feel comfortable up there.
Yeah. Do you remember the first joke that really worked, that you wrote, that you could keep going back to, that really connected with people, that you felt good about?
Yeah, there was a joke early on. I used to tell about getting Starbucks coffee and how they used to order like these frappuccinos with whipped cream, and the guy had sandals on, and I would make fun of the guy wearing sandals. And I would say, if you're dating a guy wearing sandals, how's he going to protect you? Is he going to take his flip flop off and slap you with the flip flop? It was something around flip flops or whatever. It was like a joke that I knew if I went to the Starbucks Frappuccino joke. Yeah. Although I've heard iterations of this joke throughout the course of time. This is like when Starbucks was 1999.
Yeah. Right.
And that Ross for Less joke was like a killer for me. I just remember that would be my closer on these shows I used to do in LA at Miyagi. Are you from LA?
Yeah. Well, I live in LA. I'm from Boston, but I live in LA now.
How long you been there?
Like 10 years, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So not too long.
So there was places around town, Dublin's, Miyagi's, that used to host these nights. Mm-hmm. And I remember Ross for Less was my like closer at these big, like, if you were doing Dublin's on a Tuesday, Dane Cook was there, and it was like one of these. Justin Timberlake was in the audience. I'm like, I'll bring out my Ross bit tonight.
I always like talking to comedians about their late night stand-up debuts. I believe yours was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno in 2007. If that sounds right. What do you remember about that experience?
I remember Jay noticing I was nervous and went out into the audience. Like he did his warm up with the audience, came back into my room, saw I was nervous, went back out and told the audience, hey, got a first time guest on the show tonight. It's his first time on TV. I want you to be really, really supportive of him. I thought that was really, really nice of him to do. That's kind of what stuck out about that experience. Also, Glenn Close was on the show. And when I went to go to after my set, I went to go sit down. I remember giving Glenn Close a kiss on the hand. Like I took her hand and I gave her a kiss. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? But yeah, those are the two things that stick out.
That's hilarious. Do you remember the first time you met one of your comedy heroes, someone who you just really looked up to in comedy, what it was like to meet them for the first time?
I think it was when I met Seinfeld at Gotham Comedy Club. He came in to do a guest set on my show. And then I went up after him. And I kind of made fun of the fact that he was wearing a scarf on stage. And then later on found out that he had stayed for 45 minutes to watch my act. And the club owner said, he normally doesn't stay that long. And the next night, I still hadn't met him. Oh, I met him briefly before he went on stage. The next night, he sent his wife to see me with her friends. And then his agent was there. And then his agent called Jerry and he put him on the phone with me. And he's like, oh man, I really love what you do. It was really great. And then we should go hang out. Next time I'm sitting there going, wow, I can't believe it. Like this. And again, I watched this guy's show. I remember him doing the Jerry Lewis telethon. Yeah. And his joke about a hair being in the shower when you're taking a shower at somebody else's shower or whatever, and there's a hair and it's like kind of like inching up the wall or something about a hair. And I'm like, and then now we're going to go hang out. And he asked me to do his Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And
yeah, that was
hung
great.
out there.
That episode.
Yeah, thanks. That was kind of special for me.
Yeah, very. Do you have a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
Yeah, Jimmy Fallon show. I was doing a shit ton of press in New York City, and it culminated at the end of the week with a Jimmy Fallon set. And I had my wife there, my mother-in-law. I had agents, publicists, all backstage. So I felt like I was having like a little party backstage and making sure everybody was okay. I'm thinking I got my set's 4.5 minutes. I got it down. Don't worry about it. So I go up on stage and I start my act, and it's about 60 seconds into my act, I completely go blank. I've never had this happen before. I lost the act. I lost everything. I couldn't talk. I remember just saying, I'm Italian.
God.
And then I looked at the band. The band looked back at me and they're like, fuck, we gonna do it. Yeah. and there was a moment there. There was a moment there that I was going to turn back to Jimmy and go, can I do this over? Yeah. But I didn't know, like,
are you allowed to do that?
Yeah. Can I do that? And then I popped out of it. It was almost like I popped out of a coma, and then I picked up right where I left off. So I go to the chair, and during the commercial break, I said, bro, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. He goes, don't worry about it. We'll edit it together. It's going to look great. And he said it so nonchalantly. I still was like, nah, there's something's wrong. So I couldn't rest. I couldn't relax until I saw it. Yeah. And you would have never known. Only you could tell. You could tell.
Probably you could tell, but no one else could tell.
Yeah, there's the cut there, and then I'm coming out of it. And the next time I went on Fallon, I said to Jimmy, I said, can we play what you guys cut out? So then we watched, the 10 seconds of my nightmare on Jimmy Fallon. So yeah, back then I was like, my career's over. This is done. now looking back at it, we all have a good laugh.
Sebastian, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking with you and getting to know you a little bit. And yeah, I think your next year sounds like it's going to be even bigger. So I'll be looking forward to that movie.
We'll see, man. I appreciate you having me on the show, and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks. You too.